Origin trips. They're a practice frequently talked about in coffee circles, but fewer than 1% of coffee roasters actually go on them. Do they really even matter? And should coffee lovers like you care? I'm here with Matt Kelso, the owner of Sagebrush Coffee Roastery, and he says that going on origin trips has affected not just his coffee purchasing habits, but his entire approach to business. In this three-part series, we'll discuss what origin trips are, why consumers and coffee roasters should care, and what Matt has learned from going on origin trips to Guatemala, Colombia, and Costa Rica. Matt, thanks for doing this Q&A with us. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with the evolution of Sagebrush.
All right, so we started as an online coffee roaster. Started out of my garage in 2012, and it was really a side business for something like 7 years, maybe 8. And then in 2020, it was time for me to move away from the online business and focus on it full time. And one of the reasons was because I felt like I needed to improve our coffee buying practices.
So where does origin come into play there? How did you decide you wanted to go on an origin trip?
Yeah, I had just kind of evolved as a company. We'd evolved in terms of how much we were buying, and knowing that I wanted to be a coffee educator, I felt like I had pushed the envelope of how much I could learn without actually having firsthand knowledge at origin. So It just felt like it was time for me to go make connections and learn this stuff firsthand.
Right. So you want to go firsthand to origin. Traceability is a big factor, but how do you decide where to go? And do you go by yourself? What is it?
Yeah, honestly, at first I didn't know, and then COVID hit, and so everything got put on pause. And so then over the course of COVID, we ended up growing and building better relationships with our exporters. And so when the country started opening back up, Onyx Coffee, our Guatemalan coffee exporter, reached out and said, "Hey, you want to come visit us?" And immediately I was like, "Yes, please. Can I come? How does that work?" And so Edwin, who runs Onyx Coffee, kind of organized a trip to visit his family farm, visit a couple other farms in Guatemala, and get a chance to learn about coffee firsthand.
Remind me, when is this? And
yeah, so this is our first origin trip because COVID paused the whole plan. Our first origin trip was March of 2021. And we had grown. We were looking to kind of figure out how to think about buying coffee from Guatemala better. And so Jonathan, my oldest, who does a lot of our design, basically anything you see related to Sagebrush, he's got a fingerprint on. So he and I decided, let's go. And I needed a cameraman. I thought it'd be a cool father-son trip. And so we hopped on a plane to Guatemala and got there and just kind of hit the ground running with the Onyx team.
That's crazy. So you've decided to go to Guatemala a year after you started. What is the size of the group like? What is the purpose of the trip? Tell me a little bit about it.
So their purpose of the trip was really, I think, coffee education and just getting to know farmers. And I think there's a connection. From their side of things, it's really good when they're nurturing relationships with other farms,
right,
to say, hey, these are the people that we're sending this stuff to, and kind of connect us together. And so that was their side of the thing. When it came to us, I just wanted to learn. Right. I had no idea what I didn't know, and I wanted to learn what I didn't know. So it ended up being, because it was post-COVID, it was a much smaller trip than most origin trips are. It was Jonathan, myself, and two other roasters from two other coffee companies, one in Houston and another in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so the four of us met up with 7 people from Onyx, and we just spent the week together.
So tell me a little bit about Guatemala, because this is your first time, right?
Yeah, I've been on international trips before, but Guatemala City was just something unique.
Yeah.
It was big, really well populated, and not a lot of English speakers, so you're just kind of working your way through. Most places I've been have been pretty Americanized. Guatemala City isn't yet.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of learning how to maneuver. We went to a pizza place that was incredible, but ordering a pepperoni pizza is just kind of a trick when you don't speak Spanish.
Right, right. So Guatemala City, you didn't have any stops at roasteries there though, did you?
No. We stopped in. That's where Onyx's lab is. We did a calibration cupping just to kind of get to know different coffees, and Edwin taught us some things even then. And then we took off the next morning to Huehuetenango, which is a town probably, it was a puddle jumper. It was the scariest flight I've ever been on in my life.
That sounds like a story in itself.
Yeah. I mean, the short version of the story is we're sitting there, like, I'm clearly not a small guy, right? So we're sitting there and there's like 20 people getting ready to board this plane, and there's two pilots and they're arguing. And after like 10 minutes of arguing, they finally go, like, you can tell one won the argument, and then he points to me and points to a seat that I'm supposed to sit in.
Oh,
so I'm like, okay, great. And it's like this seat kind of overlooking the door that the door doesn't even like fully clasp shut. And so we like start to take off and we get up in the air. And as soon as we like hit the cruising altitude, the two pilots like fist bumped. Like,
that
good job, we made
terrifying.
it. Like, I'm like, I'm not the type of person to like pray in real time, but that entire flight, I was, on the phone with the Lord.
Yeah, but
like,
clearly you made it to the Way Tonga, though.
And so we get out of the plane. Don Edwin, who is Edwin's father, who runs Finca Vista Hermosa, he introduces himself. We meet him, and he points to a flatbed truck and says, "Here's your limo for the week." And we like climb into the back of this pickup truck, and are just sitting on the bed of a pickup truck for like 8 hours while we drive up into the mountains of Huehue.
So you are out there.
Yeah, we were like, it was like edge of the world kind of cliff driving, 1-lane road.
That's kind of cool.
And we went up to El Injerto, which is one of the best coffee farms in Guatemala. Like, they win Cup of Excellence. Spent about a 4-hour tour with them, had lunch with them. They talked about, like, gave us a master class in coffee farming. Even Don Edwin was like, he's like, "Are you recording this? Because I want this tape later," because it was helpful for him in his farm.
Oh, wow.
And we learned a lot about varieties. We ate coffee cherries off the tree, got to even taste the difference of a Pacamara and a Geisha coffee cherry, which I wouldn't have been able to tell you that the cherry itself tastes different, much less what it is.
What they look like even, right?
Yeah, they're like different sizes. I learned that I think I'm allergic to coffee cherries because like my mouth broke out while I'm eating them. And it might just be the intensity of the caffeine. I don't know. But
that's so crazy.
So we spent several hours there, and then it's dark, and then we drive back on this like 1-lane road on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
For 4 more hours with this truck like stalling multiple times, like bad enough that they had to have a mechanic come and fix it later in the week.
Oh man!
And get to their farm, the family farm, and they open up a door and say, "This is your suite," and it's like a piece of wood on the floor. That's just kind of, it's just a small bunk quarters that Jonathan and I shared and spent the night there.
I'm assuming you're sleeping like the locals, though. It's not like they've got their mansion they're selling.
Oh no, they did. They had a mansion. We were sleeping like the support staff. Like it was in the quarters of the people that come in and do the picking. And so it's not really the master house. Yeah. But it's definitely camping.
You get a feeling though for what it's like for somebody actually working on the farm, and that's
and it was great. Like it was a very cool experience, and so we ended up spending the night on their back patio, kind of listening to other neighboring farms like play music and chat, and you could just hear like you're kind of on a mountain with a valley in the middle, and it's really open space. Most people don't even have like lights on really, and clearly no one has a TV. So they just enjoy the community of where they're at.
That's kind of nice to reset even, I bet, on that trip.
It was actually a really relaxing moment. And in that, like 3 days, I think we were at Finca Vista Hermosa, I did not have cell phone connectivity. There were a few times where we would like do a tour and get to the top of a mountain somewhere and my phone would all of a sudden like dump and then I'd run out of international data. And that was kind of the end of that trip. So it was just, it's hard to be away from the business that disconnected. But it was great in terms of just learning about the industry.
And that's a good point because we mentioned in the intro that only like 1% of coffee roasters actually go on these origin trips. And I was curious why.
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is, it's a financial cost. It's a time cost, probably more than the cost to get there. And most of us that are small business owners, we're working around the clock anyway. The idea of leaving your business for a week to go educate yourself or build relationships, there's just hard to justify the ROI on that until you actually do it. Once you do it, it's like you recognize that this has more value than almost anything else I could have done. Wow. But getting over that hump to say, yes, this is worth a week of our business to go do this, it's just a hard decision to make.
Yeah, I can see that. So, but you've already had a chance at this point to visit some farms, see the cherries themselves. Tell me a little bit about some of the conversations you were having with farmers, though, because I'm sure those were pretty significant.
So one of the mornings we were at Don Edwin's farm, he invited a bunch of producers from all around, like neighboring farms, and these were a lot of the coffees, like guys that we actually buy coffees from.
Okay.
Guys and gals, and they came and we had breakfast together. And that conversation, through Edwin as an interpreter, we're all a bunch of business owners sitting at a table going, let's talk about what makes our business hard and let's talk about why we love it. And hearing from them the things that make their business hard. Andy from the Ohio coffee roaster turned to me afterwards and said that was a life-changing conversation. Yeah. Because as much as I can read in a textbook what's difficult about farming coffee, when producers are sitting there going, I don't know how to make the right decision for my business. And this is like, my granddad started this farm and I'm not sure we're going to make it through next year if I make the wrong decision.
Holy cow.
It changes your whole emotional connection to the coffee that you're buying.
Yeah. What were some of the conversations? What were some of the challenges?
So, the most significant challenge that came up then was figuring out how to hire and focus on whether you're picking the cherries as ripe cherries. So when you think about a coffee cherry plant, or a coffee tree, you got cherries growing like on a branch. And say there's like a bundle of maybe 15 cherries on this branch and 6 of them are ripe. Yeah. So they're going to go through and pick the 6 ripe ones and then work their way through all of the trees in this farm. Maybe it's like 10 acres. Pick all them and do another pass and do it again like 2 weeks later, and then do it again 2 weeks later. And over the 6-week period where cherries are ripening, they want to capture the ripes. Yeah. The other option is to strip pick, you got 15 cherries on this tree, you just pull your hand down, dump all the cherries, and they're not going to taste as good. Because think about any fruit that you pull when it's not ripe. Like it's going to be bitter, it's not going to be good. Like that affects the flavor of the coffee bean. When they're trying to decide, hey, there's labor shortages right now, I've got to pay my labor, like it's way more skilled to have someone that knows how to pick ripes, and so I've got to teach the labor to be able to do that. I've got to teach these people who are really transient workers that go from coffee farm to coffee farm all over Latin America.
Really? All over Latin America?
Yeah, like not just Guatemala, but they'll pick, like at the top of his farm you could see southern Mexico. And so they'll go, like there's a lot of coffee in southern Mexico, so they'll go across the border and pick there. Or they'll go, south of Guatemala and pick countries there. And seasonally, it's not like the picking season isn't the same in every country, so they actually move.
I would never have imagined that. So people who are picking, they're going across all of Latin America, and there's actually a shortage going on.
Right, yeah. Because the borders are open in America, they can make a lot more money in America than they can doing this, and so a lot of people are leaving, and it's really like hurting the entire coffee industry. And so the conversation that we had there was, Don Edwin says he usually hires 30 seasonal workers for picking the cherries. And that year he was able to get 18. And someone in a neighboring farm was like, how did you get 18? I could only get 4.
Oh my gosh.
And so you're just looking at this like, okay, well, if I normally need 30 to be able to get all my ripe cherries, and I'm only able to get 18, you're either working wall to wall, which is just hard on the labor, or maybe you get 40 bags of coffee instead of 60 because you don't have the labor to be able to do it. So all of a sudden, if their yield is way lower, then for them to make ends meet, they've got to charge 40% more. And so that was the question they asked us is, will you pay it? Like, if I have to charge more, am I going to be stuck holding on to this coffee and not able to make ends meet?
Right. This is not just a choice for the farmer, it's for the entire area, too. It sounds like a pretty significant choice.
Oh, yeah. So if you strip pick, you've got way lower labor, you sell it at a minimal amount, but you might be able to get away with at least covering your bills. But you're not going to be able to grow your business. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do as a coffee producer. So it's just difficult decisions they were trying to make.
And what did you end up telling them when they asked you?
My encouragement was aim for quality. If you're marketing to America, aim for quality. Americans want quality. And who knows what they ended up doing. Actually, I do know because we buy some great coffees from those producers. And the big thing for us, I mean, if you look at what we were selling coffee for in 2020 and what we were able to buy for in 2020, like the cheapest coffee we had this year is probably $2 a pound more than the most expensive one we were buying in 2020.
I imagine if that conversation was that meaningful for you, it must have been pretty eye-opening for them as well to be able to make that choice.
I think there was it's just not every day that people from America go up into the mountains
way to Nongo,
and have those conversations with producers.
What was the takeaway from origin trips in general? Were you going to do them again? What was it?
Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway. Was I knew there were things I didn't know. I learned about varieties. I learned about the conversation we just had. I learned so much about just what the lifestyle of a coffee farmer is and how that works. I learned, like, the amount of stuff I learned was mind-boggling, and I know I just scratched the surface. I walked away going, okay, if the primary purpose of an origin trip is relationship building, I could probably do it once every 3 to 5 years. But if the primary purpose of it is to help educate me so that I can educate our customers so that we can all understand that, like, we're in a really big supply chain together. Like, this isn't just, I'm going to go to my local coffee shop and grab a cup of coffee every morning, but livelihoods across the globe are impacted by the way we make these decisions. I need to go everywhere. I need to go to as many origin trips as I can.
Matt's Guatemala trip brought to the surface some of the common issues arising at the farm and made it clear that developing deeper personal relationships with farmers isn't just a good business practice, but a chance to positively and dramatically impact the lives in those communities. And while he quickly realized origin trips have a much more significant impact than he ever could have imagined, his next trip would be unlike anything he'd experienced so far. In the next video, we'll discuss Sagebrush's journey to origin in Colombia to judge a major coffee cupping competition, the impact that had on farmers, the ensuing auction, and some common themes Matt has noticed developing in his Latin America trips to date.